Hello class. Today we're going to talk about comparing and ordering real numbers. So hopefully by the end of the lesson you will be able to compare real numbers and locate them on a number line. And we're going to use previous knowledge to do that. Okay, why are we doing it? Well, the state of Texas gives us this standard that we have to teach. It says we want to order a set of real numbers arising from mathematical and real world context. So the first we're going to talk about is the mathematical. Okay, so let me give you a very simple set of numbers to put in order. Okay, here are two sets in which I want you to put in order. So we look at this first one. It says, let's see if you can order from least to greatest. So that's the first thing that we need to know about, least to greatest, the following sets. So this first set, we've got -5, 8, 2, -9, -3, -6, and 0. And I want you to put this in order from least to greatest. Well, one of our greatest things that we have to help us with putting things in order is a number line. So let's draw a number line here. Okay? And what we basically want to do is take each one of these numbers and place them on that number line in their appropriate spot. Well, we have to have a point of origin, or a place that we can separate the positives and negatives, and we do that with our 0. Typically, it's going to be found there in the middle. And then we just start placing the numbers on there. We've got a -5. Well, we know -5 is going to be right over here to the left somewhere of 0. So we just place it in. It doesn't matter exactly where. Okay, then we've got 8. Well, we know 8 is going to be over on the right-hand side of 0, so it's going to be about right there. Now we start looking at the numbers in relation to 0 and the other numbers that are there. So we've got a 2. So we know the 2 is going to be between the 8 or 0 and the 8, but it's going to be closer to the 0. So we'll put it right there. -9. Okay, well, -9 is going to be out even further left than -5. So we'd put it about there. Well, -3 is going to be between the 0 and the -5 and just a little more than halfway. Okay, -6 would be just a little further over to the left of -5. And then we've got 0 already on there. Okay, so if I'm wanting this in order from least to greatest, I can just write the numbers from left to right. So we would have them as -9, -6, -5, -3, 0, 2, and 8 for the order that we would want. Now, if I wanted it from greatest to least, I would just write them from right to left instead of left to right. Now, the second set is a little bit tougher because it's dealing with decimals. Now, the best way to put decimals in order is to make sure that they're all the same length first, and then we can compare them. So what I do with decimals like this, since these numbers are between 0 and 1, I look at the longest number. Well, both of these are 3 digits long because we don't really pay much attention to the leading 0. And if they're 3 digits long, I want to make these other two where they're 3 digits long. Well, the one number I can add to anything and it not change its value is a 0. So I could take this 0.5 and write it as 0.500. Now it's 3 digits long and still has the same value as 0.5. Well, the next one is 0.23. Well, it's 2 digits long, so I'm going to add a 0. Okay, now it's 0.230. Okay, and then the third one is already 3 digits, and the fourth one is also already 3 digits. Now, the reason why I do that is because now if they're all the same length, I can treat them like regular numbers. So this becomes, instead of 0.5, becomes just 500. This is 230, this is 54, this is 49. And I'm looking for least to greatest. So 0.54, is our first one because it's our smallest number. Then the next one's going to be our 230, which starts out as 0.23. And you always go back to the original numbers when putting them in order. Okay, and then 409, so 0.409 or 0.409. And then last but not least, the 0.5. And now we put those numbers in order as well. And that's what we're working on today. How do I put numbers in order? Okay, so let's start off with now about a 7th grade problem. Maybe 8th grade with this particular one. It says, write the following numbers in order. Well, when you're seeing bigger numbers, and it's not just integers this time, okay, or not just decimals, it's a combination of things, we need to come up with some questions. So what is the main question that you should ask when putting numbers in order? Well, the first question that you should always ask is, okay, what order do you want? Is it going to be least to greatest or greatest to least? And then because we're in 8th grade and we get to use the calculator, you should also think about, how could I use the calculator to help put these numbers in order? Okay, that's what I want to know. So what I'd like for us to do is I want us to use the calculator to help us put these in order from least to greatest. Okay, so, well, the negative 12, it's good. Don't need to mess with it. The 3 is good, the negative 5.5, the negative 8.07. Those are all good, easy to put in order. But the negative 2 3/5 and the negative 16/5, those aren't as easy. Okay, so we know that the one type of number that is the easiest is a decimal. So what I'd like to do is take each of these and flip them to decimals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my calculator, and this calculator is going to be the same one that y'all are using in class. So let me move this over here so we can see it better. So here's our calculator. Clear off my screen. And now I need to turn this negative 2 3/5 into a decimal. Well, the part that's going to turn to a decimal is just the 3/5. So we do that by doing 3 divided by 5. So 3 divided by 5, and we end up with 0.6. So that's going to really be negative 2.6. Okay, now we need to do the same thing with the negative 16/5. So bring the calculator back up. So we do negative 16 divided by 5, hit enter, and we end up with negative 3.2. Okay, so our calculator becomes very assistive when we're trying to change things to decimals. So now we just look at our numbers to try to put them in order. Now I want it in order from least to greatest, so I'm looking for the smallest number that we've got, and that is our negative 12. So we'd write negative 12. And then next, okay, well, we've got negative 5.5, negative 8.07, negative 2, and negative 3. So the negative 8.07 is next. Okay, the negative 5.5 is next. So those are gone. And then we've got negative 3.2, and then negative 2.6. Okay, so those are now gone. But, oh, we forgot. Okay, whenever we're writing these, we need to write them in the proper frame here. So we go back to the original numbers. So this should be 16/5, and negative 2.6 should be negative 2 3/5. And then last but not least, the 3, the only positive number that we had. And that's how we put those in order. So our calculator becomes very helpful when we're putting things in order. Okay, so those are, when we looked at our standard, okay, those are the ones where we just talked about arising from mathematical situations. Now let's talk about real world. But in order for us to do real world, we also need to come up with some definitions. We need to understand the definition for ascending and the definition for descending. Well, ascending is the same thing as least to greatest. Same thing as least to greatest. Because I want to ascend, to go from small to big or low to high, to ascend. So if ascending is least to greatest, then descending is the same thing as greatest to least. To descend means to go from high to low. Okay, so with that in mind, we've got a problem that I want us to work here. Okay, see if I can get this thing out the way here. Okay, so here we go. It says the golf tournament leaderboard posted scores of negative 16, 12, negative 8, 7, negative 4, and 0. What are these scores in ascending order? So the first thing that we look at then is, what order am I looking for? I'm looking for ascending. And ascending means least to greatest. So I want to know the smallest number, or the number that's farthest to the left on the number line, all the way to the farthest to the right. Okay, so when we look at the number set, we see that negative 16 would be first, then negative 8, then negative 4, then, and don't forget about the 0, then 0, okay, then 7, then 12. And then one last question about the golf question. Who won the tournament? Well, in golf, the low score wins. So the person that got the minus 16 or the negative 16, they're the ones that won the tournament. Okay, so let's look at a couple other questions where we're applying putting numbers in order. Okay, so here's the next one. It says, which of the following lists these towns in order from warmest to coldest? So we've got Boondale at negative 17 degrees, Embertown at negative 19, Hill City at negative 6, and Waterville at negative 8. So I'm looking for warmest to coldest. So is that going to be least to greatest or greatest to least? Greatest to least. Very good. Okay, so I'm looking for which one is actually the warmest. Now, granted, to people in Texas, none of these are very warm. But we notice that the warmest is actually the -6. So Hill City is going to be the one that we start with. So that means I can automatically eliminate A and D. So now I got to look at B and C, and which one is next? Is it Embertown or is it Waterville? And we look here and we find out that Waterville is second. So that means my answer is C. And it's just that easy. Okay? One more question like this, and then we're going to look at some harder ones. It says, on a math test, Jason answered 3/4 of the questions correctly. Paul answered 4/5 of the questions correctly. Susie answered 13/20 of the questions correctly. And Kate answered 7/10 correctly. List the students in order by name in descending order. So descending is going to be greatest to least. Okay? Of how many questions I answered correctly. So descending. So in order to do this one, we need to flip everything into decimals. So if we were to take the 3/4 and we do 3 divided by 4, we end up with 0.75. 4/5 would be 0.8. 13/20 would be 0.65. And 7/10 would be 0.7 or 0.70. And this would be 0.80. So we're looking for which one would be the greatest. We find that the 4/5 is the greatest. So Paul is going to be the one that is in the lead. So it's the one that starts with Paul. And if you look at your answer choices, there's only one that does that. Correct answer is A. Now what I'd like to do is I want to look at a couple STAR questions. Okay, how are they going to test you over this concept on STAR? Well, here was a question that we had on STAR a few years ago. And it says 2 numbers are shown on the number line. Which value is not located between these 2 numbers on the number line? Okay, so the first thing you see, we've got square root of 9 over 3 and 2 pi. So just like we've been doing, we want to convert these into decimals and then determine which one of these is not in between them. Okay, so we would go to our calculator and we type in second square root 9. Okay, and then we want to get out of that. And then divided by 3, and we find out that that's just equal to 1. So this one gives us a value of 1. So then we do the same thing with pi. So we do 2, and then second, and then we have the pi there. We type that in, and we end up with 6.28. So 6.28, and it just keeps going. So what I'm looking for is which one of these numbers is not located between those. So now we just start typing each of these values into the calculator. So we know that pi is 3.14. Well, is 3 in between 1 and 6? Yes, it is. We're looking for the one that's not located, so we know that's not correct. Okay, B says the square root of 9. Well, we know the square root of 9 is 3, and 3 is also between 1 and 6. So we know that one's not it. Okay, now we've got pi divided by 9, and then pi squared divided by 9. So we bring out our calculator, and we do second pi divided by 9. Enter, and we find out that this one is 0.034, something like that. So it's 0.0. Is that in between 1 and 6? No, it's not. So this is actually our correct answer. Okay, now if we had to do the last one, we went ahead and did that one. That's pi squared, so second pi. And to do the squared, we come down to the squared button. We hit the squared, and then divided by 9. We find out that it's equal to 1.09, and it is in between that. So our lesson today was about comparing and ordering real numbers. And we look at some vocabulary like ascending and descending. Okay, to help us with that, we needed to understand what that meant. And we use our calculator to help us put these things in order. Because the easiest number to put in order is a decimal. So until next time,